There's a fog over America right now. The corporatist globalists are forming the Uniparty. We've allowed ourselves to get to this point because we don't know history, and because our country is moving towards godlessness, 1 degree at a time. But we can stop it. What stops a fog? A whirlwind. What stops liberalism? People armed with the truth. And greater is he who is within us than he who is within the world. This is the fog and the whirlwind.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome United States Senator Lindsey Graham.
It's the guts and it's the blood. 100 stripes, 100
Thank y'all. Welcome to Pickens. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank y'all.
We're declaring war on the deep state. We're declaring war on the rhinos. There's people in the middle, people like Nikki Haley and Chris Christie, who are like, we're going to keep the government out of things and allow parents to cut children's junk off. And this is why I want to show this. We want them out of our movement. And you'll see we've got nationalists, we've got paleoconservative, Christian right, and reactionaries in this movement. And we want them out of this movement. We want the neocons running away from us in terror, because we really want this over and done with. This is something that we are tired of, and something that our movement is tired of. So get out of our movement, move. And it's America first, baby. But the reason, you want to know the reason why I talk about this so often, is because we are coming back. We are getting in here to change this party. We are fighting to take back our party. We are done with neocons, and we want them to get out of our movement. We really are done with getting into one more war.
We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023.
When we started this journey, a journey like there has never been before, there's never been anything like this. We had a Republican Party that was ruled by freaks, neocons, globalists, open border zealots, and fools. But we are never going back to the party of Paul Ryan, Karl Rove, and Jeb Bush.
The left, for one thing, understands that political power is a tool that they use regularly. And what do they fear? Believe it or not, they also fear political power when it's used against them. The reason that they freaked out so much in 2016 when Trump got elected was the fear that he would use political power to, for example, close the border, build a wall, also make it more difficult for women to get abortions and things like that. And he was successful to varying degrees. They did everything in their power to stop him, which made it much more difficult. And that's also the reason why they hate Governor Ron DeSantis so much, is the idea that he can govern his state and there's really not much they can do about it because he's turned the state pretty red. Political power is feared by the left more than anything, especially the idea that it can be used against them. Co-host actually of Zoo Nation asked me wanted to know, he said, do you think that if Trump wins, it'll actually force the Overton window more to the middle because the left will realize their error? No, not at all. I've been pretty clear. I have a desk in front of me. It would be like on this end of the desk is the hook of a ratchet strap, and I've got the ratchet on the other side. And every so often, someone pulls on this ratchet. and then they push it back down. That's what's happening in our country. What's happening in our country is a ratcheting up of the pressure, and it is not stopping. When Biden gives an inflammatory speech like this, he's ratcheting up the pressure. Heck, his speech, his so-called Dark Brandon speech in front of a blood-red background was a major escalation of tension, was a really strong pushing down of this ratchet strap. And eventually, this ratchet strap is going to pop. We're declaring war on the deep state. We're declaring war on the rhinos. There's people in the middle, people like Nikki Haley and Chris Christie, who are like, we're going to keep the government out of things and allow parents to cut children's junk off. And this is why I want to show this. We want them out of our movement. And you'll see we've got nationalists, we've got paleoconservative, Christian right, and reactionaries in this movement. And we want them out of this movement. We want the neocons running away from us in terror, because we really want this over and done with. This is something that we are tired of, and something that our movement is tired of. So get out of our movement, move. And it's America first, baby. But the reason, you want to know the reason why I talk about this so often, is because we are coming back. We are getting in here to change this party. We are fighting to take back our party. We are done with neocons, and we want them to get out of our movement. We really are done with getting into one more war, one more war.
We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023.
The left, for one thing, understands that political power is a tool that they use regularly. And what do they fear? Believe it or not, they also fear political power when it's used against them. The reason that they freaked out so much in 2016 when Trump got elected was the fear that he would use political power to, for example, close the border, build a wall. Also make it more difficult for women to get abortions and things like that. And he was successful to varying degrees. They did everything in their power to stop him, which made it much more difficult. And that's also the reason why they hate Governor Ron DeSantis so much, is the idea that he can govern his state and there's really not much they can do about it because he's turned the state pretty red. Political power is feared by the left more than anything, especially the idea that it can be used against them. Practically speaking, is that we're not going to take down the left without a certain amount of coordination. We have got to be coordinated. It's not just going to be, oh, okay, you over here coming at him from this direction, you over here coming from this direction. He's going to be like Thanos and backhand you here, backhand you there. We've got to team up and work together. And what I'm trying to do in the Telegram community is to try and build that level of coordination. One reason why, and I've talked about this on Instagram and YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, is one thing about the left that you have to admit is they have a system. There is an organization. For example, the word went out. Hey guys, Fauci's word is gold and his word is law. We are doing whatever St. Fauci says. We will not question the science, and if you call otherwise, you're called a science denier. Same for the war in Ukraine. Whenever it began, oh well, if you're critical of all of the regime in Ukraine and or Zelensky himself personally, then you're just Putin's puppet. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me on this episode of The Fog and the Whirlwind. Very exciting to come back to talk to you guys on the 16th of March of 2024. Very cool. Let me adjust the camera just a tad. But what an exciting time we live in, right? There's not a whole lot going on except for an election that may determine the conflict in Ukraine. I'm kidding. Pretty much a foregone conclusion, but I still got to cover it. It's still important to talk about because I don't know if you guys knew this, but the second most popular party in Russia is the Russian Communist Party. The Communist Party of the Russian Federation, to be exact, is what they actually call it. So not exactly the same party that ruled Russia for so many years during the Cold War. That would be the Communist Party of the Russian Soviet Union. That party was disbanded at about the 1993 mark under Boris Yeltsin. He actually banned the party, but there were people who had been part of that party who then joined other different smaller communist movements, and eventually another communist party took shape, which is now called the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. Going to talk about that. Got a lot to get into in that regard. Very exciting. Wanted to greet all of you guys and say hi. Thank you so much for watching over on Rumble. I appreciate your support of free speech. I appreciate your support for you guys watching on YouTube as well. And so, what I'm going to do, I always begin with a passage of the week. I'm a Christian. I'm going to go ahead and have a passage of the week. I'm going to read that for you, then hop into the news. Very excited to get into this. We really don't have a whole lot of time, so let me go ahead and read the passage of the week, which I always put out on social media, guys. If you guys are ever wanting to know what I'm going to talk about, it's always able to be found on Telegram. So we have a lot to talk about Russia, but we also have to talk about other big thing that's going on. I mentioned, whenever I posted about going live today, that I was going to talk about my congressman here in South Carolina, William, he's a wannabe conservative, but not an actual conservative. But I'm also going to talk about this big TikTok bill because that has made a gigantic ripple in so many people's ponds, to complete the analogy. So there's a lot to get into. So got to talk about that for you guys. Very excited. Got to go ahead and make the passage of the week. It is in Romans 1:14-17. I'm going to be reading the ESV. I am under obligation both to Greeks and barbarians, both to the wise and to the foolish. So I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. I was reminded recently that you and I have no righteousness within ourselves. You and I are sinners. We know from the book of Isaiah where he has a vision of the high priest Joshua, the high priest, not to be confused with Joshua, the son of Nun, but Joshua, the high priest. And he stands, and his righteousness is taking up, and he's before God, and it's just filthy rags. And also, when Isaiah was standing before God, he said, "What woe is me, for I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips." And that's us, right? We are of ourselves, our own nature. We are unclean. And so, what a sad state we would be in, but God, but God. He sent his one and only Son to save us, and thank God that He did, because we have no way to earn ourselves into heaven. And so, whenever I read this, and I'm reminded that we are grafted into the vine. No longer do you have to be circumcised to be able to go to heaven. No longer do you have to be careful about certain things that you eat, otherwise it's called sin. No longer do you have to be careful about two different pieces of cloth touching each other. There's so many laws in the Old Testament that we don't have to go with anymore, and we cannot go overstated. Um, Jesus made it happen. Jesus made it possible. He's the one that redeemed us, right? And we are lost without him. It is a debt that we would never have been able to pay back. But thank God our Savior came, born of a woman. He lived a perfect life. He died on the cross, fully God, fully man. He died on the cross when he rose again on the third day, he's coming back for us. And so you and I are able to live a free life. You know, if we were in the flesh, we would be completely enslaved and not able to do anything. But by the grace of God, you and I even have free will. Otherwise, it is only evil continually. But we are able to live a good life and do what's right only because of His holy and righteous work. So we gotta get into the news now. I want to begin with some announcements. I meant to this past week, and comment "Christ is King" in the chat if you guys agree with what I just said. Please subscribe, guys, if you're watching on YouTube. If you're looking at my tweets on X, live stream will go there. Odyssey usually gets the archive. Rumble and Odyssey have the archive. YouTube has the archive. Follow me on X as well. I'm pretty active on X and Telegram. You can also support me financially at Zelfog and substack.com/subscribe. So if you guys are watching Rumble, I'm not making money off of Rumble's ads. Once in a while, I'll be clicking on Rumble and seeing a ad on my videos, but others as well. And I just want you guys to know if you're watching a Rumble, I'm not making money off of it. So please do support me. I don't want to run ads for, different gold groups. And even though I like certain coffee companies that are veteran owned, I don't really want to be dependent upon them either. I want to be dependent upon you. I want you guys to be the ones paying me. So you can go to Substack there. There's the URL floating at the bottom here where you can go and support me. Paid subscribers get exclusive content. I'm working on some of that, and admission into the private group, Supporters of the Fog Whirlwind. Now you may be thinking that you're not able to really support me financially. That's okay. You can hit me up in the live chat, and that helps this algorithm. So you can do that, and then you comment on the episode archive. So whenever this live stream is done, go to YouTube, go to Rumble, go to Odyssey, and comment. That really helps this episode get pushed forward because YouTube and Rumble are a bit of a jungle. Rumble is much kinder to young conservative streamers and content creators and political commentators, but YouTube's not. YouTube is really hard to get started, so I need you guys to help. Now, I'm very pleased to announce that I have a new thing going on this episode. You are able to now send a paid chat with Entropy. I was able to take some time, took me hours to get Entropy set up, but it's pretty easy. You can go on Entropy. So Entropy is pretty easy to figure out. It is Entropy Stream live and go to the Fog Whirlwind. I'm the Fog Whirlwind on most places, by the way, guys. You can find me pretty easy to figure out. Other social media links, by the way, are in the description of the YouTube and live stream and Rumble live stream. But I'm very active on Telegram, X, and I'm pretty active on Instagram as well. So go to Telegram, t.me/thefogwhirlwind. X is the Fog Whirlwind, and Instagram is also the Fog Whirlwind. And what you're able to do as of this episode, guys, is entropystream.live. And I've got some funny things that you're able to do there. If you pay at a certain tier, I think I have an Alex Jones one. They wanted me to have a Bernie Sanders one. And look, okay, they wanted me to go with a Bernie Sanders, the little rotating video, little loop of Bernie Sanders saying, "I'm once again asking for your financial support," which I found funny, but I refused to put a socialist/communist Okay, how is the audio? If you guys are able to hit me up in the live chat and let me know. All of a sudden, I had a notification that the internet connection was unstable. I apologize. That's another reason to support me, guys, is because I'm going to take the money and use it to buy a laptop. Because what I have now is sufficient, but as you can tell, I have technical issues, and I don't think it's my Wi-Fi. I'm pretty sure it's a hardware problem, not a software problem. But we're going to go ahead and power on through. So definitely do support on Entropy if you want to help out this stream and support my show in that lane. And of course, we have social media links you guys can follow. So, got to go ahead. I want to greet those of you who are watching The Fog Whirlwind по-русски. Здравствуйте, приятно познакомиться. Меня зовут Joshua, я консерватив политики. Извините, мой русский плохо. In English. Hi, guys. My name is Josh, and this is The Fog and the Whirlwind. I am a conservative and a traditionalist, and I want to talk about the Russian election because it is important for our world. It is important for America and people in America to pay attention to what is going on with Russian politics. So thank you for watching. I'm sorry that I'm not able to speak this exclusively in your language and stream exclusively to you guys in your country. And also, subtitles are not working over there. I'm not able to figure that out. But I want to have a big bunch of people following the stream. Of course, I'm really trying to get the conservative movement in America to see my content. But I also want to have Swedish conservatives and people all across the world to follow me. I mentioned Sweden because that's my homeland. I'm ethnically a quarter Swedish. So big stuff to cover. You guys are not going to be shocked by this, but guess what? Putin, president of the Russian Federation, is running for re-election. How about that? You guys are just shocked to hear that, I'm sure. Wow, really? He's running for re-election? Yeah. So he's an independent. He is not affiliated with a political party. Now, some of you may be a little bit confused about that because I will say, and I'm going to go ahead and find the name of the political party. There is a party, a very conservative party in Russia that is backing Putin, but he is not with that party, if that makes sense. It would be more on the lines of if Trump is an independent and then several conservatives voted for Trump, let's say back in 2016, just to kind of give an American frame of reference that makes a little bit more sense. So that would be sort of the deal. Also, think about this. I think it was in 2018 when Bill Bledsoe ran against Lindsey Graham. He ran, and he's run a couple of times now, but the first time he ran against Lindsey Graham, he ran a campaign that was with both the Libertarian Party and the Constitutional Party. He was a fusion candidate. You are able to, in this country now, it would never happen between Republican and Democrat, and actually, legally, I don't think that could happen with a Republican and a Democrat because we have a two-party system. But with other parties, I mean, you could even have a fusion of a Libertarian and a Green, although that would be really cringy. But you are able to, as long as the parties are okay with it, run in two races, basically run in two different parties. So Bill Bledsoe, back in 2018, was able to run as a libertarian and a constitutionalist. He was able to run as both because his values aligned closely enough with both parties because he, in many ways, was a liberal or a libertarian. And by liberal, I mean like the big L, old school liberal, like classic liberal. He was able to do that, and he was also able to run in the Constitutionalist Party. So that's important to know. Let me find this for you guys. So in that regard, I'm gonna leave more to type on another laptop. In that regard, Putin sort of is running with another political party. He has their backing, but he is not running on their. He's running as an independent. He doesn't really need a party. He has run before, of course. This is now his fifth time running, and there's not really a whole lot that he needs to do campaigning wise. I mean, of course, RT and the Kremlin are going to be running ads for him in Russia. And I've been following from time to time. I wish I could have figured out how to get the green screen. But the RT has not really been talking about the election that much, other than elections are going on. Now, elections started yesterday, and let's see here. Trying to find, yeah, yeah. Um, so the election began in Russia yesterday, and it ends. Let's see, ends on Monday. So Monday will technically be when the result is announced. So to get back to it regarding candidates, so you've got Putin, then you've got Nikolai. It's actually Harinotov. Harinotov. Yeah, I had it right first. Harinotov. And he is with the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. Actually, a guy that is older than Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir Putin is 71, and Harinotov, Harinotov is 75 years old. So closer to Trump's age. Trump is 77, almost 78. He will be this year in just a couple of months. And so he's running for the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. Now, it was funny. I was thinking to myself, because I was doing some reading about the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, as I mentioned at the top of the episode beginning. I was doing a little research. And there's a Marxist group in Russia backed by several of the youth, many people of the youth. And they are a pretty strong portion of this party. And it sounds eerily familiar, doesn't it? Young people being right, like, people in our own country, in America, oftentimes support the wrong political cause, etc. And it's really too bad, because there's just so many people in our country and apparently in Russia who want something for nothing. And it's sad, I'm not saying that as just no big deal. I'm saying that in terms of pattern recognition. It's kind of funny to look at it that way. So he's running, and then there's Leonid Slutsky, or Slutsky is the best way to pronounce it. He's of the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia, so he's also running. And it's basically a four-person race. There was going to be six total, so five plus Putin, but two of them ended up not getting on the ballot, not being qualified, or qualified by Russian law, etc. And so Leonid Slutsky of the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia is running for president. And then we've got another person of the New People Party, which is also very popular with young people. It is Vladislav Dovongov. And so he is of the New People Party running for president. Now, from what I can tell, they're pretty much right in the middle of several issues. Their big thing that I could tell was things like, oh, we like to empower the community, whatever that means, very collectivist in language. And we want to take care of the environment. So that's not explicitly left wing, but it's definitely a lot of left wing dog whistles. A lot of you know that. But when it comes to that, that's where that party leans. And you got to think about it. So if you're someone in this country and you're thinking to yourself, well, who do I vote for? If it depends on your stance on the war in Ukraine. And I was thinking to myself this morning, but also just this past week as I prepared for the show, I wonder how big or how small of a factor Tucker Carlson's interview, excuse me, guys, with Vladimir Putin played in this. I just wonder to myself, okay, you're living in Russia, your president gets interviewed by an American. When you watch this interview, are you pleased with what you see, or are you upset? And I think for a lot of people in Russia, they were pleased. They thought to themselves, wow, okay, cool. He gave the Russian perspective, which of course a lot of people in Russia who back the war are going to say, good, we want him to get that viewpoint out there. And Putin did in a very well-spoken way, regardless of whether you agree with what he said or not. Putin spoke out and said, this is my viewpoint, and this is part of Russia. And again, this is what Putin said. Throughout history, he went all the way back to like the early, that would have been the 9th century, so the 800s, and did that. And he kind of it became a gigantic meme about him giving Tucker Carlson a history lesson. So we now have got to get into some things that are being said. So we have the UN and the EU condemning the Russian election. So you call it an autocracy, you call Putin a dictator, etc. Then they hold an election and you condemn that too. The UN and the EU have condemned it. And if it's the UN, then you guys know that that's led by America. So basically, our government condemned the Russian election. So this was yesterday when this came out. The first day of voting in Russia's election saw several disruptions, including dumping dye and ballot boxes and setting fire to polling stations. Angry Russians with no political choices beyond incumbent President Vladimir Putin acted out in frustration Friday, causing disruptions at polling stations as voting got underway across the nation. Several incidents were reported Friday, and a number of individuals were arrested. Ballot boxes, for instance, were attacked by voters who dumped dye into them, a reference to deceased former opposition figure Alexei Navalny, who was attacked with such dye by Putin supporters in 2017. Navalny, who died under mysterious circumstances in a Siberian penal colony in February, was one of several individuals qualified from campaigning against Putin, who has ruled the country since 1999. Other incidents of vandalism included 2 women attacking separate polling stations, and I actually saw a little bit about that on RT with Molotov cocktails. Yep, at least one incident of ballot boxes being set on fire inside a Moscow polling station. Another incident in which a man was arrested for setting off fireworks inside a polling station in Urals, a certain region of Russia. It seems Russians have chosen their form of protest, ruining voting booths, said Tatiana, Stanovaya, who is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Russian Eurasian Center, although it remains unclear whether such acts are coordinated or simply an expression of extreme individual frustration over Putin's ceaseless grip on the country. So, important thing to note, guys, if Putin is reelected, he will rival Joseph Stalin for the length of his presidency or premiership in the case of Stalin. But I guess we'll just use the word reign. His reign over Russia will be as long as Stalin. The president of Russia has 6-year terms, not 4-year terms like in America. So he would be president. Again, we have an election in 2024 for us in November. Theirs is in March of 2024, and he will leave office in 2030 if he is voted out because they get voted in March, and then they are inaugurated in May. So if he is reelected, then he will. I mean, think about that. He will be equaling a record. He won't necessarily be breaking a record until he actually outlives. And Stalin got old too and died in office. So in this situation, Vladimir Putin will have a equal reign as Joseph Stalin. If he is reelected, he will not be done until 2030. I have anyone watching here in Russian. Приятно познакомиться. Спасибо. Меня зовут Josh. Я консерватив политике и промышленности. My русский blog, and so I will be speaking in English because my Russian is not very good. But welcome and greetings. And the reason I say that is because I'm sure with a title like this, some people from Russia are going to want to see. So we have that, and now we go to what the Western leaders are saying about these different ballots, these different polling centers and ballot boxes being set on fire. Western leaders have long shrugged off the vote as a farce. Friday was no different. So on Friday, some different statements were made. UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric on Friday announced that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I've read about him before, Ben Shapiro hates him, for instance, condemns the efforts of the Russian Federation to hold its presidential election in areas of Ukraine occupied by the Russian Federation, noting that Russia's attempted illegal annexation of the region has no validity under international law. Russians in Ukrainian areas annexed under Russian control, such as Donetsk and Crimea, have been forced to accept Russian passports to survive, with many even being sent to fight against Ukrainian forces trying to liberate them. So that's the other thing that's generating a lot of controversy and getting people to angrily decry this election as a sham is that parts of Ukraine and parts that formerly were part of Ukraine, like the Crimean Peninsula and now parts of Luhansk and Donetsk, are being allowed to vote. These people are being viewed as Russian citizens, and of course, you got to go through a process. You have to be approved. You have to be accepted in order to vote. There are rules to this. But people in Ukraine, obviously, Zelensky and several other people in his administration are saying these people shouldn't be voting for Russian president. They are Ukrainian citizens, and this is an act of Soviet Russian aggression. So yeah. So someone, for example, this is a guy that was a blue check back when being a blue check was cool in the leftist size. Would like to congratulate Vladimir Putin on his landslide victory in the election starting today. No opposition, no freedom, no choice. And that is Charles Michel on Twitter. So a liberal mad that a country is not in the grip of the deep state. European Council President Charles Michel is who that was. He said that. I already read the tweet and repeated it for some reason. Should have screenshot and repeated it. Let's go on to the next one. We have at UN, Ukraine protests Russian presidential elections on its territory. So we'll get into some details regarding what the UN is saying. So, Ukraine, joined Friday by more than 55 countries at the UN, condemned Russia's attempts to organize elections on occupied Ukrainian land, saying they were not valid. We condemn in the strongest terms the Russian Federation's illegitimate attempt to organize Russian presidential elections in temporarily occupied areas within the internationally recognized territory of Ukraine, the group said in a statement read by Ukraine's UN ambassador, Sergei uh, Kirslutska, flanked by his counterparts. Holding elections in another UN member state's territory without its consent is in manifest disregard for the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, he said. Such elections have no validity under international law. Starting Friday and continuing through Sunday, so again, it ends on Sunday, results to be announced after Sunday. Russians are casting votes in polls that international election observers have dismissed as having no chance of being free or fair and are designed to return President Vladimir Putin to power for another. Ukraine, supported by council member Slovenia, which is where Melania Trump is from. No, she's from Slovenia or Slovakia. I think she's where to go. Requested that the UN Security Council meet Friday to discuss Russia's holding of the vote in areas of Ukraine that Russian forces have seized and occupied, including Crimea and the Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia regions. I'm probably butchering. It convened an entire Security Council meeting to criticize Russia for Russia's conduct of democratic elections on territories which administratively, politically, and economically are part of our country, like it or not, Russian Deputy Ambassador Dmitry Polunsky said. So we have this, and of course they're upset about this. This is not the surprise. We now need to go into some other things. We have another article talking about, and this was only put out an hour ago. Putin's party hit by cyber attack as armed Russian troops oversee voters in occupied Ukraine. So there's a cyber attack. Russia's governing party. That's right. So they're actually the governing party in power. So even though Putin is an independent, the party in power, which is the biggest party, obviously bigger than the communist. The Communist Party of the Russian Federation is the second largest, and I'll find in a second the name of the biggest party. But the one that they're Okay, Garner from Just the Facts. Can you hear me? I've tried resetting the network connection. We'll see if that helps. Testing people. Hit me up in the live chat. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me look at Rumble too, because it's a possibility that people are saying something. Okay, thank you, Garner. I appreciate it, man. I really do. People like Garner of Just the Facts. You should definitely follow on Substack, guys. I don't see any messages on the Rumble chat. Okay. Well, it looks like some of you are following on Rumble. Hi. Glad you're watching. I really like Rumble. I appreciate their stance on free speech and hope you guys will continue to support me. So let me know, Garner and other people. I should make Garner a mod. If there's other audio issues. This is one of the reasons I do ask for your support, your financial support, to quote, because it will help you get some better hardware and software for live streams like this with less audio issues. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Cool. All right. So let's go here. So Putin's party has apparently been hit by a cyber attack. You guys can look that up on your own. I'm going to be putting that in the sources. You guys can go to The Fog and The Whirlwind at substack.com/subscribe to support me. But I also put my sources up there. So definitely look that up too. All right, let's see. There we go. United Russia. Let me read a little bit to you guys about United Russia, because I think it's important we know kind of what's at stake here. So United Russia is the party in power. And yeah, there are several articles you can find if you just look at United Russia talking about uh, talking about who they are and the fact that they have been hit with a cyber attack. So let's see, find the actual website. Yeah. Do you guys think, like, I was thinking about this, while I look this up, wouldn't it be wild if Russia went back to being communist? Like, think about that. People love to hate on Russia now. I wonder if the left would actually start liking Russia again. Has anyone ever thought of that? Like, if what's his name? Nikolai. His name? It's a little hard for my South Carolina mouth. Nikolai Unitkov, of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. What if he took over? What would the left do? Would they actually be okay with it? Would they just say, "Okay, well, Putin's out of there, great, and now we like Russia." Would they say, "Now, Biden needs to be soft on Russia because they're starting to go into a better direction?" Because some of the really old Democrats would probably say, "No, we're getting flashbacks to the Cold War. This is the worst day that we've ever seen." And, some people who are actually communists that are sitting in Congress, people who are very socially liberal, but when it comes to economics, agree with things that Marx says, would probably think it was fake. That'll be something that'd be funny to see. I've been extremely critical of Jackson Hinkle, an individual who calls himself a MAGA communist. um, yeah, a MAGA communist. Uh, so would he then applaud that because he's also very pro? I don't know. It's funny to look at the different angles and wonder to yourself, if something should happen, would Putin then be viewed as a good guy? Because Putin, say what you will about him, is not currently leading America. He's not currently leading America at all. Because despite what Democrats say, he's not the one leading the American Republican Party, right? I mean, the American Republican Party is split right down the middle with anti-Trump faction and a pro-Trump faction. The pro-Trump faction is a lot bigger. But Putin is not leading Russia in a communist direction when it comes to economics, anyway. Now you can call it stakeholder capitalism. You could say that he's doing that, but the problem with that, I mean, I've heard people make that claim. The problem with that is Klaus Schwab is not a big fan of Russia, of the WEF. I mean, Russia's not in on the WEF. Russia doesn't go there. Russia has banned George Soros. He cannot step foot in Russia. So anyway, yeah. I just don't buy that at all. It's it's silly. All right, we have another article to read from the Moscow Times. With state Duma elections fast-approaching, Duma by their version of Congress, Russia's unpopular ruling party is once again turning to Vladimir Putin. United Russia has a problem. One recent poll put the party's support at 27%, the lowest level for the past 13 years. This is hardly ideal with elections to the state Duma taking place between 17 and 19 December. So that's later, after. That'll be after Putin. Will be these other elections. So anyway, it's an important thing to ask with the party and leadership. I'm just saying, guys, the gap between the Communist Party and United Russia, which is the party in power, has been very close before. Now that's with, for example, the Duma. So the Duma would be sort of like having Trump in office, but then in his latter part of his second term, 2018, 2019, 2020, the House being blue. That would be kind of what it is. United Russia is not as popular as they were at first. They're starting to lose ground to the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. However, Vladimir Putin as a leader, at least according to polls in Russia, is up to some 85% or something like that. Now, then the question becomes, though, is that number accurate? Because there are people who hear that, who hear, oh, Putin has had a support system. He's high in the polls. He's usually in the 70s and 80s, and sometimes up almost 90%, 89%. And some people say, well, it's because people are afraid. They're afraid of speaking out against Putin, and there very well could be an element of truth to that. I'm not disputing that at all. But then the question becomes, well, how does he keep on winning re-election? Because you have to ask yourself, okay, one of two things. Either they're responding that way in the polls and then voting against Putin in the election, and the elections are a fraud and a sham, and that's why Putin remains, or alternatively, on the other hand, he actually is popular. It depends. Is he leading and ruling by intimidation and people are afraid to vote against him? Or is he genuinely liked because he kind of puts on a tough guy face for Russia that the West does not want to mess with? Because think about it from Russia's perspective. I mean, you had what happened in Libya happened under Obama and Clinton. The Middle East for years has been a real mess because America, for the life of it, cannot leave the Middle East alone. It either wants to go into Iraq, it wants to go into Iran. It goes to people like Lindsey Graham who want to go into Iran, who use inflammatory rhetoric like we need to, for every hostage they refuse to let go, we need to take one of their oil refineries. That's something that Lindsey Graham said. You have that, and then also you've got people who were all remaining in Afghanistan until the end of time. The United States does not want to leave the Middle East alone. So many people in the military-industrial complex would love to go back in there to Iran. And when you look at it from that perspective, if you're living in a different country, you're probably going to want a leader who makes it very clear to the West, stay away, don't mess with us. Take that for what you will. Okay, other things to read to you guys about the election. Let me get this pulled up here. So this is something that opened my ears a little bit. That really say to myself, interesting. I did not expect to go up on X, and this would not have been on X. This would have been taken down, I'm sure, had Elon not bought it. And I'm not going to be able to show this to you, but I'm able to play the audio for you. Listen now. This is Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Want to ask in our school, starting from elementary school, do we want our kids to be enthused to the pervert values that lead to degradation and extinction? Do we want them to impose this understanding that instead of males and females, there is some genders? And do we really want them to go through gender change operations, do we really want it for our children? It is unacceptable for us because we have the future overall different. And the Western elites are working against communities, against the people of the Western countries as well. Against everyone. Want to ask not.
So it may have been a little hard for you guys to hear. Hold on a second. So that may have been hard to hear. But there's Putin talking about transgenderism, and talking about how bad it is. I just played an audio recording of that, and it's going to be up on my site, of Putin talking about transgenderism in the West and saying, "Do we really want to import that into our values?" No. We want that to stay in the West. We want to have a different future than that. We don't want that. All right, so I've got other articles to read to you guys. Let's see. Here we go. Ukraine Inform. It's kind of like a mixture of Ukraine and Inform. Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk called on residents of the temporarily occupied territories not to participate in Russian pseudo-elections. That'll be up in Substack for you guys. So basically, don't even take part in this. U.S. condemns Russian elections in occupied Ukrainian territories. I already told you guys that the UN did, led by the U.S. Well, now we actually have Matthew Miller of the State Department who said in a briefing, the United States condemns Russia's continuing efforts to undermine Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence through sham elections held in occupied Ukrainian territories. All right, then we have this article written at theconversation.com. Putin has no successor, no living rivals, and no retirement plan. Why his eventual death will set off a vicious power struggle. And I wanted to read this to you guys because this got my brain moving. I was thinking to myself, I haven't thought about that. With Putin being in power for so long in Russia, the question very well becomes, what's the future? What is going to be next, whenever he eventually dies? Because Putin's not going to live forever. Two things are certain concerning Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, says theconversation.com. First, he'll be reelected as president in the rigged election scheduled to run from March 15th to 17th by resounding if fraudulent margin. Second, he is not immortal. He will die one day, and he is likely to die in office rather than retiring willingly. Though we don't know when that day will come, the world might want to consider the power struggle that will commence the day after Putin departs. Ever since he took over as president in 2000, Putin has been perfecting the machinery of electoral fraud to guarantee victory. So buying, ballot miscounting, distribution of pre-filled ballots, tampering with ballot boxes, voter monitoring and intimidation, and ballot stuffing are all methods that Putin's agent employ to guarantee a favorable result. Well, someone who is not going to challenge him is Navalny or Prigozhin. Those people are dead. So it does present a question. Who will? If Putin does die in office, as this article is saying he probably will, not necessarily sure. It's definitely a possibility that he'll die in office. It's possible that he will not willingly choose to retire. But there, at the same time, he may run for this term and afterwards say, you know what, I'm going to be an old man. And he is an old man now. He's 71. I'm done. I'm going to be done at 77 years old, about 77. So that's interesting. I wonder what will happen in the future, and that's the thing that people should be asking. I have this criticism of Israel. Israel is looking at the Middle East around them and thinking of right now, not of the future, not of how are they going to have peace in the Middle East, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. Israel is saying right now, bomb the heck out of them. Right now, don't let them push us around. Right now, going to take everybody on. And that's what I'm actually thinking in terms of this. Right now, Biden is thinking, we need to flex our muscles, as Ben Shapiro likes to say regarding the Russian military in Ukraine. We need to send money to Ukraine and show Russia that you can't intimidate us. We're going to send money to Ukraine, whether you like it or not. What happens 7 years from now when Putin's being reelected as an almost 80-year-old man and he loses because he's old? or wins and then dies in office in that other term, or if he dies in this term. Whenever he does die, whether it be assassination or disease or just some natural cause of being, in his 70s, what is America? Not Biden and not Putin because they're old and eventually going to leave office. Hopefully Biden very soon. But what are the two countries going to do? Is there going to be a better relationship that eventually builds, or is it just going to be harsh rhetoric until the end of time where Russia and America hate each other? I don't want that. I want there to be a country. I think that Russia should be Russia first, America should be America first, Sweden should be Sweden first. And as I said, you make Madagascar, Madagascar first, South Africa, South Africa first. These countries should not be united in a globalist world. They should be independent from each other, multipolar, and that's what I'm calling for. So we have another article from Reuters that talks about the different candidates a little bit. That'll be on Substack. But we got to move on. I'm already, 40 minutes into the stream. About 20 of it was a loop. So got to get into now some stuff that I really wanted to talk about, having to do with my rep. And some of you guys who are in South Carolina have William Timmons as your representative. And I think it's important to listen to this. I want to play this for you. And you might be surprised when you hear this. You might say to yourself, well, of course, I mean that's not a surprise. This guy is not a real conservative. But I'm going to go ahead and play some audio for you. There's a big thread that's on X and thankfully has not been deleted. I want to play for you guys. That is Will Simmons talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And just being a woke guy when it comes to race in this country, rather than a meritocratic system or at least someone that doesn't buy what the left says about race. It sounds very much in this week that he does care about race and buys into that Black Hispanics are being victimized by whites. So I'm going to go ahead and play several different clips for you. There may be a gap. Here we go.
In the 116th Congress, we made a recommendation to make permanent the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I am pleased that this recommendation came to fruition and is now a permanent office. In both this Congress and last Congress, we've heard from many witnesses on ways Congress can improve its hiring practices and promote diversity and inclusion broadly, whether it be for people of color, priority for this Congress. A top priority for this Congress, and we need to get it right. I just appreciate you working hard on this, and with that, I will go back. Our objective should be that every member's office, well, let's start with Congress. Congress is the representative of the country, and then within Congress, every member's office should be representative of the people they represent. So it should be diverse based off of race, gender, geography, socioeconomic background, lifestyle. And it should be proportional based off of the population they represent.
And the staff of Congress is spot on. I would just first diversify the Congress, and the staff of Congress are spot on. I would just approach a bit different.
But if would we benchmark success as making it representative? I mean, is the definition, is our success? My whole thing is it should be proportional. So if there's a decision about go ahead.
At the minimal benchmark, that would be great. If that were our minimal benchmark and that's our success, we're not there yet. The data that we projected for the House. If we wanted to set that as a baseline benchmark and to say that we could reach that and that be a success as a benchmark, based on the data that we collected from the 2019 compensation and diversity study that we did for the House. And I want to state that as a caveat that we only collected information for about 50% of our workforce. And that was a survey, and it wasn't done with having 100% of our workforce represented. And so I state that with that as a caveat. Having said that, though, with those caveats included. If we use that as a representative workforce and data scientists state having 50% representation does give you a good sample size. We're not there.
I couldn't agree more.
William Simmons of South Carolina, ladies and gentlemen. William Simmons, who represents District 4 of South Carolina, agreeing with two people that are talking about how we need to have racial and sexual hiring quotas. And this guy is in the Republican Party. This guy has the audacity to stand, and I mean, I was there. I was there when George Abuzide, Mark Burns, and Michael LaPierre ran against William Simmons. And he called himself a great conservative. He tried to prove that by talking about how he voted against impeaching Trump. Sorry about that. And so that is from the voice of William Simmons. You just heard that. His quotes of a leaked Zoom call where he agrees with racial and sexual hiring quotas. And it's because, and I say this all the time, there are so many, and I used to use the term neocons a lot, and I still will, because there's two problems with the Republican Party. Number one, neocons, and I will preach that until I'm completely taking off the air everywhere, even though I can find somewhere to upload it. Honestly, I have complete. But even if I'm taken down, you guys can find me there. But I will always talk about the problem of neoconservatives, people who love getting us into more war that triggers more dollars and gets more Americans killed because of the military-industrial complex and corrupt money in politics. And so there's that big problem with neocons who love war. Then there's liberals. And again, when I say liberal, I'm not really necessarily referring to the same kind of thing that you might be thinking of, some of you who are more normie when you listen to the show. And, because there's liberals, and the funny thing about it is Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager like to draw this distinction between a liberal and a leftist. To me, there may be a difference in philosophy. I think that there is, but they are both diametrically opposed to conservatism. So a liberal and libertarianism is part of liberalism. A liberal has the mindset of things like, we need to have a social contract. We should have very much a laissez-faire capitalist government. We should have a government that respects, basically just exists to protect property rights. And that's it. Now that is not something I'm down with. I think we need a government that also does more things than that because of the fact that really a lot of it comes back to Romans 13, which says that the government bears the sword to punish evil. And I think that if you have a government that does not do that, if you have a government that rewards evil and punishes good, your only option, your only recourse, number one should be to pray. I mean, there's really two things. Pray, but then secondly, you got to take political action as well as you can. And Paul used legal and legal arguments, I should say, and legal rights that he had, and so you call that societal rights. That was the word I was looking for. Being a Roman citizen, he did not vote, but he had certain rights as a Roman citizen that terrified people whenever he invoked them and said, "Do you have it in your law that you cannot beat a Roman citizen without just cause, without hearing?" And they realized very quickly, the people that were getting ready to beat him, how they were in big trouble because he was a Roman citizen by birth, because where he was born. He didn't purchase it. He was born into it. And so there's that aspect where you should use the state. You should use government. And again, he wrote the book of Romans, and he, full of the Holy Spirit, said that the government, in its purpose, is to reward good and punish evil. And so as Christians, that's what we should advocate for. Not just the government that protects your property from being taken, although we should be. I'm against theft, of course. It would be weird for me to be for theft. The only people that are for theft are thieves themselves, right? And maybe some people that are politicians as well, because they're cheats and liars. But regarding the party, the Republican Party, there are so many liberals who say, what? It's like Chris Christie and Nikki Haley. We're okay with letting parents chop their children's junk off. People, as long as the parents consent to a child having, hormone blockers. It's not really that big of a deal because the only line that we can draw is consent, ignoring the fact that I kind of want to come up with a term for it. What you can call it, medical industrial complex, or the medical and pharmaceutical industrial complex loves transgender surgery because they look at children and they see dollar signs. They see, okay, we can convince you somehow through the school system, whatever it is, the universities, that you were born in the wrong body, and some of it ties into TikTok as well. Then you will come in here, get therapy, that's money as well, and then you will come in and get a surgery where we're going to be not only do surgeries on you, hormone blockers, and then do other surgeries from time to time to make sure that the body parts we've created remain. It's money. It's a money scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme where these people in the medical industry, it's over on TikTok. There's so many doctors on TikTok that are extremely woke, encourage people to be trans and brainwashing the impression with their minds of our children. And then what they do is conduct the surgeries. That's what they do. And it's satanic, it's demonic, and it's evil. And look, if you have a problem with that, you're just different than I am. Okay, it's not that if you want to call yourself a Republican, you can call yourself a Republican. You're probably going to call yourself a conservative, but no, there's nothing conservative about it because conservatism is not only tied to Christianity; it's also tied to tradition. It's also tied to this idea that when you are born in the right body, and we live in a fallen world where not everything is perfect, but God made you the way He made you for a reason. And by the way, this is something that the founding fathers held to. It wasn't necessarily like only the Christian God, period. Although they believe that, because even those of them who are deists, they believed in a God of the Bible in some form. They may have thought he was not really involved in the affairs of man. They did believe in the God of the Bible in some scale. But if you're of another religion, you can also believe that this evil group of scientists and doctors that are trying to come after our children either need to be disincentivized or silenced. And I'm not calling for violence, but I'm saying one thing about this that is important to keep in mind is I was thinking about this. You can't have it both ways. You can't on the left say you're for free speech and say, "How dare you try to attack me as a doctor or a psychiatrist or a woke professor? I have free speech, and you're not allowed to censor me." And then also sit back and agree with, I believe it was Jake Tapper on CNN, saying Newsmax is pushing extremist views, and so is OA and DirecTV needs to delete the apps, and so does Roku, smart TVs, and things like that. They need to remove these apps so people can't even go on there and listen to these extremist views because, excuse me, what that is free speech for me, but not for thee. So there need to be consequences. The only way that this is going to happen is if it starts affecting people's money, people's ability to make money. And if they feel comfortable and fearless, and that's the thing about this, these people who are liberals in the Republican Party, but also just on the mainstream left, feel secure, feel untouchable. I think they can say whatever they want to say, and no one's going to do anything. And the only way that it happens is if you and I get into office like DeSantis did, and say things like, "Children are not allowed at gay pride parades." And you know what's interesting is then the gay pride parade started getting canceled, and I really wish it was a big failing of the DeSantis campaign was he didn't talk about that enough. If he had hit that a little bit harder, I think he would have done a little bit better. He should have said, looked into the camera and said to the American people, "Hey guys, I want to let you know that I said in Florida as governor that there need to be age verification laws and that children cannot go to a gay pride parade." And all of a sudden, gay pride parades started getting canceled. Also, check out this footage. You can find it on my website. This is what Spanish had said of people chanting, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children." If DeSantis had said that, he would have gotten way further ahead because it would have gotten a lot of just normies, not necessarily just conservatives, but normies interested. They would have said to themselves, "Wait a second, yeah, what is up with these people? These people are evil." And he didn't hit that hard enough. But Simmons is another liberal that's in the conservative party and needs to get out of our movement. We don't want him. We are done with neocons and liberals. We're going to get a liberal version of this as well, not just neocons, but liberals also, and they need to get out of our movement. Christie, Haley, Simmons, also have another transcript. There's some quotes from U.S. Representative William Timmons of South Carolina appears to defend the teaching of transgender ideology to young students. In a recent phone call, and this is back in 2022, so this could have made him unelectable, but unfortunately it didn't back in 2022. Look, I voted as hard as I could to get him out of there. I did not vote for Timmons, whatever it was, even after the primary between him and LaPierre. Here we have in a recent phone call back in 2022 with a constituent, Republican incumbent Congressman William Tumman said that he can understand why gender ideology would be taught to elementary school children because he had sex ed in sixth grade. He then went on to insinuate that the teaching of gender ideology might not be a bad idea because children will already be exposed to it on the internet. This is the thing, right? So Christy and Haley are going to say, well, we need to have abortion be a state issue. It's personal to every woman. That's something that Haley said. And Christy said it needs to be a state issue and that there should not be a national rule on abortion because these people are liberals. And here's the excuse making by Representative Timmons. Well, children are going to learn about this on the internet anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal if teachers in the public school system teach them about it. Really? And there have been laws put into place to get being taught in preschools and elementary school in South Carolina, but did nothing about high school and didn't do much to restrict it in middle schools as well. And Timmons, a Republican, is okay with that. He has no problem with that. He sees no issue with that because, well, they're going to find it on the internet anyway. And this is the kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that pro just these people that are so-called on the right that are also fine with porn. And these guys don't want to ban porn. These guys are like, well, if you outlaw it, then people are going to get a hold of it anyway. It's the same argument for the war on drug or against the war on drugs. When we should look at drugs and what they're doing to our young people dying of overdoses, and ask ourselves, you know what? There's problems with the way that the war on drugs is being conducted, but legalization is not going to be the road we should go down. In almost every case, if someone wants to make an argument for medicinal marijuana, that might be a little bit of a different issue. I still don't like it. I think that the DeSantis is actually pretty good on that role. He's like, no, we don't want to turn Florida into Colorado. But if there's some people that actually have a medical problem and they need something like that, all right, I can kind of wrap my head around being okay with that. But in most cases, no, I think that we should have cops that make sure that people aren't doing drugs. If anything, I think we need to prosecute it a little bit harder because we don't need young people with drugs readily available. We don't want crack shops and pot shops on every street corner in South Carolina here or anywhere else in this country. That is we don't need our country to become Oregon, which has legalized everything. We don't need that. The call to go back to this article about Timmons, uncovered by a citizen journalist on YouTube, took place at the behest of a concerned citizen who didn't want his fifth grade son to be exposed to the trans agenda present in a book. Timmons' rationale in the phone call hinged on the idea that ideas like the LGBTQ and trans agenda proliferate the internet and that minor children will be exposed to them by various online sources. Rather than the young students be taught the facts of life, Timmons seemed to indicate, than to let them learn about the ideas in a less controlled environment such as social media. At some point, people are going to get this on the internet and on Instagram and on TikTok or whatever. Timmons went on to further defend transgender ideology when the interviewer pointed out the absurdity of it. Timmons appeared to support the inclusion of the transgender curriculum because there are adopters who believe in trans ideology, believe that girls can be boys and that boys can be girls. If somebody says a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy, this is the most insane, postmodern, ridiculous thing that I've ever seen. The constituents said. But there are literally people that have medical degrees that disagree with this. Timmons shot back. So this is Timmons agreeing with these people and saying, well, there's people that have medical degrees that disagree with you and I. And then Timmons' only defense was, well, I got this removed from Greenville County School. And, he only did that with elementary schools, but it's still available for middle schools and high schools. So it's not that big of a step. We'll just put it that way. There are so many books, and Senator Kennedy has done amazing work on this that are really exposing our children to evil. And Timmons is part of the problem. He is not helping our state and helping our country. He's a liberal on this issue. He is okay with it. Okay, now to say something that you guys probably are not going to like. Unfortunately, unfortunately, who endorsed William Simmons? That would be Donald Trump. Former President Donald Trump endorses William Simmons for Congress for second time. This is on Greenville News, so definitely in District 4, which is where Simmons represents. Former President Donald Trump endorsed Congressman William Simmons for re-election for South Carolina's 4th Congressional District. I'm honored to stand by President Trump and once again receive his endorsement for my continued service in Congress. Simmons said in a press. Oop, it messed up. In a press release, I'll keep fighting against the radical Democrats in Washington to secure our disastrous southern border, to hold Joe Biden and his failing administration accountable, and to put America first. So that's something that Simmons said. This represents the second time the former president has endorsed Simmons after endorsing him in 2022. Simmons entered Congress in 2019 after serving as a member of the South Carolina Senate for one term from 2016 to 2018. And Trump said in a press release, Congressman William Simmons is a terrific advocate for the people of South Carolina's 4th District. A captain in the Air National Guard, he fights hard to secure our border, strengthen our military, support our veterans, grow the economy, defend our Second Amendment, and hold Joe Biden and the radical left accountable. An original member of my South Carolina leadership team, Congressman William Simmons has my complete and total endorsement. How disappointing. How disappointing. I was not happy to hear that at all. I'm not, on the one hand, surprised because it was probably a parting gift from Daniel before she left the RNC. I'm sure she had a hand in that because Ronna McDaniel is part of the problem, and thank God she's out. Although I don't think Michael Watley. I said this last episode. I don't think Michael Watley is going to really help things by much. But what's interesting and what has really given me a little bit of hope is this article here, and I've already knew about this because of where I live. House Republican earns primary challenger over McCarthy support. Adam Morgan, a state representative from parts of Greenville, South Carolina, is slated to launch a formal campaign against Representative William Simmons on Thursday night. And this article is a little old. Adam Morgan has officially announced that he is running in the primary against William Simmons, and it's going to be an uphill battle because Simmons has, unfortunately, I want to emphasize, been endorsed by Donald Trump. Adam Morgan has been endorsed by the America First Pact. Bravo. And Adam Morgan, I have reservations about him. I've heard some things, not going to get into details about him personally regarding connection to his constituents and not always wanting to give them the time of day. Personal things also regarding, I don't know if he's going to do particularly well in it. And I hope that he's not truly endorsed for people. There's plenty of people, what I'm trying to say is, who pose as MAGA that are not actually MAGA. And at this point, anyway, Adam Morgan is definitely better than William Simmons. William Simmons is posturing and is poised to become another Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. If and when Lindsey Graham finally dies in office or retires, William Simmons is going to run for that seat and probably get in. And I am disgusted that he is my congressman and wants someone like Adam Morgan or really someone better than that even in there. I want someone who is bold and strong on the issues, someone who is unapologetically pro-life, someone who is unapologetically conservative when it comes to social issues, including the LGBT. I would love that. And unfortunately, we have Timmons, who, as I just accounted for you guys, is okay with it. So he is a state representative for Greenville, South Carolina, is slated to launch a formal campaign. He said he's also a co-founder of the South Carolina Freedom Caucus chapter. Says there's a void between Simmons and the Ruby Red District because he is not engaged in bigger fights with GOP leadership or joined the rebellious House Freedom Caucus. Simmons refuses to join that. On the fight in January, Williams was completely absent. He wasn't with the Freedom Caucus, he was with McCarthy. That's a huge stain on his record, Morgan said in an interview with Politico. Yeah, that was another thing I didn't like about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She sided with McCarthy. William Simmons sided with McCarthy. So if you want another Kevin McCarthy Republican, another Lindsey Graham Republican, vote for William Simmons. If you don't, if you want someone better than that, vote for Adam Morgan. That's what it comes down to. So calling his conservative voting record the bare minimum, Morgan added, "Where are you on the big fights that are really impacting and changing the system? The concessions that the conservatives got from McCarthy, like some of the biggest changes in a generation for the operation of the House of Representatives." And it's like, how in the world are you not present in that fight? Primary challenges from the right aren't anything new for House Republicans, but Morgan is making a new implication of conservatives more explicit. It's not enough to back the right flank priorities anymore. You also have to be willing to rebel against party leadership. There's not a problem with that. I would like someone way better than Simmons in there, and Adam Morgan looks like he would be the man. So I really hope he gets in there. I am planning to vote for Adam Morgan, and God willing, we get someone more conservative than that. Okay, got to talk now a little bit quickly about the war in Ukraine. Wanted to play some things for you. This was shocking. Want to play it for you. Ben Shapiro, of course, as you guys know, is decent when it comes to talking about gay marriage, although he talks about it in religious terms relatively well, although he is Jewish, not a Christian. And he does not hold the divinity or the messiahship of Jesus Christ. Messiahship, I don't know if that's the word. But he wanted the Joe Rogan Experience and actually had a better rationale against gay marriage than Matt Walsh did, and Matt Walsh is Christian. But where Shapiro loses me is he is for the legalization, or at least government being out of marriage, so he would therefore be okay with gay marriage in this country. Not okay with that. Don't endorse that at all. I think that Americans need to do what Tennessee has done and start going offense and say we are not allowed to, as a state matter, force people to officiate gay marriage, and that's something that Tennessee has done, and that we should really be pushing for as a movement. Shapiro and the Daily Wire are absolutely on that movement. Even though Matt Walsh talks about it, where are you when it comes to actually pushing that strongly enough? You better talk about things that mainstream conservatives are a little bit more comfortable talking about. Unfortunately, that's one of my very few votes I pick with Matt Walsh. Most conservatives are in the same area when it comes to the trans issue, but people pretty much have given up on gay marriage and have given up on actual social conservatism. And that's something that we all need to push for more. So another thing that Shapiro is just dead wrong about is, number one, he wants to give Israel a blank check, strongly against that, but he's also wrong about Ukraine. Listen.
Put all that aside. If the money for Ukraine is designed to prevent the full takeover of Ukraine, then that's the amount of money that we should be spending on Ukraine. That is what is in America's interest. If that money is being given to Ukraine in the bizarre assumption that will allow for the full-scale reconquest of Donbass and Crimea, that's stupid and it's not going to happen. No one has made clear at this point exactly what the aid is for. This is a signal failing of the Biden administration. It really is. So there are a couple of big battles that are broken out, one on the Democratic side and one on the Republican side. The battle on the Republican side is a almost tripartite battle. There are three positions on the Republican side with regard to Ukraine. Position number one is the position that I take, which is that, effectively speaking, it is in the interest of the United States to prevent a full-scale Russian takeover of Ukraine, but it is not in the interest of the United States to prolong the war only to grant the false assumption that Ukraine is going to take control of Donbass and Crimea. And so we should seek an off-ramp while also preserving Ukraine's independence against the Russians. That happens to be the Henry Kissinger position. I've been taking that position since, I believe, April of 2022, like 2 months into the war. This has been my consistent position. At no point, for example, have I suggested the Ukrainians invade Russian territory. At no point have I even suggested that there was a possibility that the Ukrainians would take back Crimea or the Donbass. At no point have I suggested that there ought to be American boots on the ground. There should not be. I've not even suggested there should be an American no-fly zone over Ukraine. So the position that I've taken is America's interests are promoted by preventing the Russians from taking all of Ukraine, but they already were in control of the Donbass and Crimea, and that's probably not going to reverse itself. That's position number one. Position number two is the position that Joe Biden seems to be taking, kind of, which is that we should just, in an open-ended way, grant aid to Ukraine for anything they want. We'll let them decide the off-ramp. I think this is an idiotic position. Why exactly should Ukraine decide the off-ramp? In fact, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is actually trapped. He's trapped because he can't tell his own people who want back the Donbass and Crimea that he's going to stop the war short after a full-scale invasion of his country. So he actually does not have the ability to go back to his own parliament and to his own people and say, I want an off-ramp here. And I'm going to let them keep Donbass, and I'm going to let them keep Crimea, which means that it's actually in the United States' interest, if it could, and again, I've been saying this for almost 2 years at this point, it's in the interest of the United States to actually, if they could, go negotiate a separate peace with Vladimir Putin that would guarantee the future security of Ukraine, American security guarantees, Western security guarantees, and also acknowledge that Russia is going to maintain control of the Donbass region as well as Crimea. And so there's the Biden position, which is basically like, okay, blank check. do what you want with the money, push hard. Maybe you'll get the Donbass back. Maybe you'll get Crimea back. And I've always thought that was a stupid position because the American people do not have taste for that, nor really should they, because it really is not in America's interest. And then there is the third position. And the third position has not been clearly articulated, but it has been heavily implied. And that position seems to be that Ukraine ought to be fully ruled by Russia, that Russia actually should win in Kyiv, that Russia should actually take over all of Ukraine and install a puppet dictator in Ukraine. And so it's unclear to me in a lot of the foreign policy that, or at the very least, that the United States doesn't have any interest if Russia takes over all of Ukraine.
So I wanted to play that for you guys because this typical neocon rhetoric is if you guys are not for giving aid to Ukraine, then you're for Russia. Not necessarily true. I mean, there are parts of the right wing. I don't think any part of the Republican Party, but parts of the right wing that are pretty cool with Putin. And then there's parts of the right wing that are just not cool with Putin, but they're not cool with Zelensky. And that's not the same thing. I'm in that group. I am not cool with Zelensky at all. Zelensky is someone. I really want to do a special for you guys. I may do it behind a paywall for a time and then release it for you guys later. But I'm probably going to do for you guys that are paid subscribers. I've got some paid subscribers. Good study, a good episode on Gonzalo Lira, Coach Redfield. Someone whose views in many regards I did not agree with, but an American citizen by birth who died. He died in Ukraine. Now, there were reports that he died in jail. So he died in Ukrainian custody, but he died in the hospital in Ukraine. He was given a lawyer that did not speak English, so there was no ability to communicate between Gonzalo Lira and his lawyer to even mount a legal defense. And I'm going to play the video for you guys of some of his videos. He made it his last video he ever made. He said, I am going to be sent to a work camp, and I'm not going to allow that to happen because I will die in the work camp. So I am going to try to escape into another country. And in about 5 hours, this is months ago when he posted this video, he said, I will either be safe in another country on the run, or I will be arrested, and who knows what's going to happen to me after that. And Tucker Carlson interviewed Gonzalo Sr., Gonzalo Lira's father. So Gonzalo Lira Sr. talked to him, and he shed some light on the story. And Tucker had the intellect and the honesty to play some videos from this guy. And it's unfortunate because this guy will never be seen on the internet ever again. Not to say that his views were good, but he had human value. He is made in the image of God, and he's dead. No one's ever going to hear his voice ever again. And he died because of actions taken by Zelensky's regime. And it's unfortunate and it's sad, but that is the case. And people got way more ticked off about the death of Navalny than they did about the death of Gonzalo Lira, who's an American citizen. I mean, where's the outrage over that? It's non-existent. And so then you listen to this, you listen to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro doesn't address this, doesn't address the idea that the fact that in many regards, excuse me, Ukraine being called a democracy is not right because they've banned opposition parties, and they have jailed a political prisoner named Gonzalo Lira who then died. That is important. It is not addressed. So wanted to throw that out for you guys, and we don't have a ton of time left. I've got to, with my remaining time, and again, we're getting over the hour and a half mark. Talk to you guys about TikTok because this is very important. Well, and I say that the reason I suddenly went from Russia to William Timmons and back to Russia and Ukraine is because dang it, Timmons loves giving aid to Ukraine. Timmons loves it. Now I wanted to give you guys a chance to listen to a semi-viral rant that Adam Morgan went into, got over 1 million views on X. And so let me for you. I apologize. He did not get that many views, but he got quite a few. Let me put it on you guys. Here we go.
The pressure in here in Colombia is for me to not even vote red on the board. Y'all might not know this. A dark money entity that was created on Tuesday, the day after we voted for this, I went home and an attack piece went out in my whole district about the fact that I voted for this. I get that the people in Colombia, that the lobby wants me to either not vote or to vote green on this, but my constituents want me to vote red, and they want their tax money spent on core government functions, on their roads, on their schools. That's what they want their money spent on. They don't want us in here trying to play this government planning thing where we and our bureaus can figure out where the job should be, who should be employed, how much money should be allocated where in the private sector. It never works. It's socialism. It's never worked anywhere before. So what are we doing to trying to do it here?
Would you consider the fact that South Carolina's track record on bringing major projects into this state is a winning record, and therefore, again, commerce should be listened to rather than those people back in your district that may not have ever brokered a deal, may not understand what it means being a project, may not understand economic incentives. So what your suggestion is, we should listen to the people back home in your district rather than the people at commerce that have been successful at bringing these mega deals to South Carolina.
Mr. Rutherford, I don't think that you could have espoused a philosophy that disagrees more fundamentally than me. I completely disagree with you, and I think that you believe what you just said. But no, I 100% am going to listen to the people back home who I represent in this house, and you should listen to the 40,000 people in your area, and not the bureaucrats at commerce, and not
audio issue, sorry.
The lobbyists, and not the multi-billion-dollar international corporations. You should listen to your constituents like I am. So yes, I will always fall back on the common sense of the wonderful people.
Oh. Sorry about that, guys, for some audio pauses. It's just connection issues, but yeah, that guy's running against William Simmons. Pretty cool. All right, another thing that I want to get into is TikTok. Okay, big deal, TikTok, because this is blown up everywhere. People are insanely, just taking this up as a big cause. If you're on the woke left who think that it is their God-given right to groom children using the app and make money off of it and doing dumb dances, that's one element. There are so many different sides to this TikTok debate. And then you've got these people like Dan Crenshaw. So Dan Crenshaw was perfectly fine with TikTok being used when it came to pushing wokeism. His problem is he says it's a national security issue. Here's the interesting thing, and I'm going to encourage you to go and listen to Tucker Carlson interviewing Rand Paul most recently. And I can put it up on Substack for you guys. But Rand Paul cites the legislation that's being pushed that will force the sale of TikTok. It would give TikTok's parent company ByteDance 5 months to sell to people, stockholders who are American, people that live in this country and not in China. So it would force the sale, or TikTok will be banned. TikTok will be banned in the continental United States. And say that this is because it is a national security issue. Now, I want to point something out to you guys, and don't misunderstand. I am not trying to put this into a weird direction with this, but I will say I found it interesting. So, trans ideology being pushed on TikTok, no problem. Pro-abortion stuff being pushed on TikTok, no problem. For a long time, a lot of conservatives on TikTok were being shadow banned and then outright deleted and banned on TikTok. Not many people care. Finally, some people started saying, okay, well, this is owned by a lot of Chinese people. It started to get some people talking about it. Okay, is it possible that this would have eventually turned into a big issue? Yeah, potentially I could see people asking questions about this, sure. But it really blew up after October the 7th. When the attack happened on Israel, several leftists got on a TikTok and showed death footage of people on the Israeli side killing people, and just made videos talking about war crimes allegedly being committed by Israeli troops, and their hashtag Free Palestine videos. Then all of a sudden, the pressure on TikTok really got a lot worse. People started saying, "We've got to delete this stuff. We've got to get rid of it." I do wonder if that's a factor here. If the big problem was not the woke trans stuff and the abortion stuff, but the stuff having to do with Afghanistan. Sorry, guys, with Israel and Iran funding different Hamas groups and stuff like that. I wonder about that. I do. I wonder how much of that is a factor with this. And then Crenshaw. One thing I will say, guys, if you are for banning this bill, then you are on the side of Dan Crenshaw. If you're against banning this bill because you think that the individual should be allowed to install this app, then you're on the side of Tucker Carlson, you're on the side of Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're actually on the side of Donald Trump. Donald Trump said we shouldn't really be worrying so much about TikTok. We need to worry about Facebook because Facebook is the enemy of the people. That's what Donald Trump said. And that becomes the next question: if this bill goes through and the sale of TikTok is forced, will Facebook buy it? So, is there a potential issue with the Chinese government harvesting and mining data through TikTok? Yeah. Is there a bigger problem, arguably, with the United States government interfering with Facebook, meaning Meta, Meta, Facebook and Instagram? Yeah, I would say it's arguably the same, if not worse, because our own government tried to make it mandatory to get an injection to a problem they created with gain of function research in China. And then there's also things this bill being pushed for by the House that stipulate we need to have protections from the executive branch, but also the legislative branch for election interference. Well, funny thing about that, what happened in 2016? They claimed that Russia hacked the election. So make no mistake, if they make a bill that bans TikTok, they will use it to interfere with Facebook and or X, saying you guys need to stop running ads for these people that we don't like. They will use it to subvert the conservative movement in turn, and they will make the argument of it is for your protection. We don't want extremist views to be exposed. Remember, on Facebook became kind of a huge thing of, hey, you may have been exposed to extremist content. They will do that triple if the bill about TikTok goes through. So that's something I will say about that. And also, guys, again, just again, Dan Crenshaw supports this. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson are against this. And Rand Paul is against this. Pay attention. Who do you agree with more as a conservative? Are you more on the side of Dan Crenshaw? If you are, he's another liberal and neocon, which sounds opposite, but neoconservatism begin on the left. You can listen to Paul Gottfried talk to Pete and notice about how neoconservative actually it is conception began on the left and moved into the Republican Party and co-opted it. The old conservative position was that of Pat Buchanan and Russell Kirk, and you could read by Tom Woods if you want to have that backed up. Ron Paul's position on war was the conservative position on war for a long time. That's the dog. If you guys see me around. Guys, that's going to about do it for today. I've got things to do, people to see, and other stuff to get ready for next week. So I'm going to do what I usually do and hang out for a little bit longer. We're going to look at the live chat. Check the live chat. Don't see anything on entropy. And like an decided to support me there today. That's fine. I'm not expecting it. It's just if you guys want to give, I want to give you guys the opportunity to give. But I'm very thankful for those of you who support me monetarily on Duffload in the whirlwind.substack.com/subscribe. I don't really see anything in live chat. Put a video, put a message. Do you guys agree or disagree with Shapiro, specifically on war in Ukraine? I don't see any other videos. Any other comments on my stream? Well, guys, I'm gonna go just a little bit longer. Yeah, I'll tell you. I really want to move the Republican Party rightward. You guys may have seen my threads. I put them on my Telegram. I put links on Telegram to my threads. I had 2 big rants on Twitter talking about conservatism. First, I talked about specifically Michael Knowles. I kind of took him to task a little bit. Then I made another one talking about Con Inc., where I took Steven Crowder to task, a little bit about ones as well. Talked about the Blaze very quickly. Talked about Charlie Kirk, and talked about. I mean, that's what I think of when I think about big conservatives. I didn't really talk about Prager. I probably should have, but I didn't. I didn't really have space. I wanted to keep it to about 10 tweets, and I did. So I mean, I've got my criticisms of these guys, and it's not like I'm just perfect. I'm definitely not. When I come in here, one thing that I like about listening to someone like the Pete Quinones show is when you listen to Pete Quinones talk to Thomas 777 or other guests, he talks to Dark Enlightenment, he talks to Curtis Jarvin. Curtis Jarvin's really smart. Thomas 777 is really smart. You are listening to guys who are students of history. You're listening to well-read political thinkers and readers, and Pete Quinones definitely. That's one thing that I will say about Shapiro is even though I disagree with Shapiro on foreign policy and certain things about domestic policy when it comes specifically to his acceptance of gay marriage just being a lost cause, we're not going to be able to fight back against him on that issue. Still, though, there's times from time to time that Shapiro will cite Plato or Aristotle or something like that. We'll talk about history. You don't get that with Charlie Kirk. You don't get that very often. You do get that. But not with Glenn Beck's show, not very often. Maybe sometimes in his interviews a little bit, but not Glenn Beck's main show. You don't really get that with Steve Dace either, and you don't get that very much with PragerU videos, or I should say clips like live streams that Prager does. He does talk about history and philosophy some on his show, but the problem with Prager is the guy who did a debate recently about how porn is perfectly okay, or written by Judaic law, therefore it's okay. It's like, look, that's a fundamental misalignment of values. I don't go along with that at all. I think that we as a society, again, should enable our government to bear the sword to punish evil, and it's really dangerous and destructive to our young people. I'm saying this as a former porn addict, and I'm not someone who says, "Well, could have been illegal, I wouldn't have done it." No, I think that it should be cracked down upon. I think that it would really help people not get addicted to it. I think if it was banned, it would really help. So, well, guys, that's gonna about do it for now. Go on X if you want to read what I said about Con Inc. and conservatism, and I'm going to go ahead and leave you. Thank you so much for your support. I am very thankful, guys, and you who are watching and speak Russian. Spasibo, очень приятно, and everybody have a great evening. Take care. Really looking forward to having episode 69 with you and episode 70. Got a lot more good content coming out for you guys.